And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, December 4th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, like we usually do. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to talk about more injury news for the 49ers. Both running backs, Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, are being placed on injured reserve. Christian McCaffrey is going to be out for 6 weeks with the injury that he's been dealing with. It kind of flared up again. And then also talk about Jordan Mason. He'll be placed on IR for an ankle injury, I believe. So we'll get into all that in just a second. Then we'll talk about the MVP race, where everything kind of currently stands after Week 13. Talk about Saquon Barkley, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the guys that are, up for this award. We'll get into all that, who currently leads the pack at the moment. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about the Vikings-Cardinals game. The Vikings pulling off a comeback, winning on a Sam Darnold go-ahead touchdown late to Aaron Jones. We'll get into that conversation. We'll also talk about two quarterbacks that were benched this season, and since they've come back, they have played really well. And I just wanted to acknowledge them, Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young, and just kind of get into the conversation on, did the benching help? And it seems like it did, so we'll get into that conversation. And then in the final part of the show, I'll go through my power rankings, my top 5 teams after Week 13. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the two running backs for the 49ers being placed on injured reserve. So Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason were running the ball well on Sunday, and then McCaffrey goes down, and then Jordan Mason also suffered an injury. So you have Garendo, who's going to end up being the lead guy, and this kind of spells the end for the 49ers. I did say this the other day when I recapped the game against the Bills, but this is it for them. I don't really see at this point. And on top of that, you also got the injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I just think it's too much for the 49ers to overcome at this point. And it's unfortunate because McCaffrey, before he got hurt, he was running the ball really well. Like, he looked like the Christian McCaffrey that we're accustomed to seeing. And then at one point, he takes the handoff, or I think it was a pitch. It was one or the other. And he just fell to the ground. And he was ruled out for the rest of the game, and now he's going to be placed on injured reserve. Because of a knee injury. And it was a long road for him to get back to this point. And, it was great to see him back these past few games, but he ultimately wasn't 100%. And I think we all knew that because he really wasn't running the ball effectively. There's a couple, blips here and there where you're like, all right, there's McCaffrey, but he wasn't 100%. And hopefully next year he could bounce back and he's the Christian McCaffrey of old. But it was a challenging year for him. And this is a guy that has dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of his career. And, you worry about that going forward, especially if you're the 49ers, because, this year was just a lost season with all the injuries. Pretty much all of your starting offensive players got hurt and missed time, including Brock Purdy, who had to miss a game. Defensively, you lost guys on the defensive line. You're still waiting for Dre Greenlaw to come back from the injury that he suffered in the Super Bowl. Guys in the secondary. It's been a challenging season for them. And not only did you lose your starting running back, but you also lost the backup in Jordan Mason, who also did a nice job filling in for McCaffrey. And now you got to go to the third string. And on top of that, you were missing Elijah Mitchell going into the season as well. So it's just... The Niners, there are certain years where they just can't overcome injuries, or they just deal with a ton of injuries. And I really thought when McCaffrey came back and You got everybody else back. You got Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings back. I thought that this was going to begin a second half run with the Niners. And then, the Nick Bosa injury happens and McCaffrey gets hurt again. And it's just at this point, losing back-to-back games to the Packers and the Bills, it's their season's over. And I look like I'm flip-flopping, but I didn't anticipate Nick Bosa getting hurt. I guess, with McCaffrey it's a little bit different because he isn't playing at 100%, but I was in my mind I was thinking, all right, if everybody could stay healthy, this team can make a run and win their division and get into the playoffs. Because when they're healthy, they have the best roster in the NFC West. But it just never happened because certain guys came back and then other guys got hurt. And now it looks like, their season's really over. Now, they're 5-7. Can they run the table? Anything is possible. But I just don't see it. I don't see it, especially when you have the Lions coming up on your schedule. This week against the Bears, I think that's a tough game. Now there's no Matt Eberflus, and, we see certain teams this year, like the Saints, for example, when, they let go of their head coach. The first game with the new head coach, with the interim head coach, the team ends up winning. Now, if you're the Jets, it's the opposite, but the Jets actually didn't play that bad against the Bills, even though, their kicker forgot how to make field goals. But, yeah, it's you do worry about that. But the Niners at some point have to win. So I think they should win on Sunday, even with the injuries. But, again, who knows? The Bears have a good defense. Caleb Williams has been playing better. Like I said, you got the Rams. Well, you also got the Rams coming up on the schedule. They're fighting for their playoff lives as well. That's a big Thursday night game coming up next week. Like I said, you got the Lions. You got the Cardinals again. So, also the Dolphins on the schedule. So, there's really no gimmies to finish out the year. They could finish with a losing record, which I would not have expected going into the year. But, again, because of the injuries. Now, Kyle Shanahan did say that he's not going to need surgery. McCaffrey won't need surgery. But, he did talk about how, he feels bad for him and that, he worked his way back just to get hurt again. It's been a really tough year for him. And, again, you just hope that going into next year, things are better, and he's the Christian McCaffrey that we're accustomed to seeing. This is what Kyle Shanahan said. This is courtesy of an article on ESPN.com. I just feel for him. It was a real frustrating year for him. He worked his butt off to get back to this point, and I think he was really feeling good about to take off, which it did look like that because, the explosiveness was there. He almost had a touchdown run if he didn't get, tackled by his shoestrings, his shoelaces. He just had that real unfortunate injury last night. I know he's as crushed as anyone, but he'll get through this. He's a hell of a player, a hell of a person, an unbelievable 49er, and he'll be back stronger than ever next year to help us. So they'll be going up against the Bears with Isaac Guerendo, who's had a couple of big runs this year. He did score a touchdown in the game on Sunday, which I was hoping was a touchdown pass, but immediately when you see Purdy throw it backwards, it was going to be a running play. Either way, I would have lost my fantasy matchup, but I'm just throwing that in there. And they also elevated Patrick Taylor Jr. from the practice squad. So that's what he got. Actually, they did claim a Benaconda from the Jets, one of their running backs, because they put him on waivers. So, they're looking for help at that position. But, at least you would have had Jordan Mason. But now he's gone for the season. And he finishes the year with 789 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns through the first 12 games. And he's set to be a restricted free agent after the season. And McCaffrey is under contract. Next year, he's got a cap hit of $9.8 million for the 2025 season. So, Jordan Mason probably not coming back. I mean, maybe he does. But he did a nice job. A team will definitely pick him up because of what he was able to do this year early on. Because, he led the NFL in rushing at one point. And, now 49ers probably don't bring him back. And like I said, somebody will pick him up. But McCaffrey will be on the team next year. And again, the 49ers, they got a lot of decisions to make because Brock Purdy, are you going to give him that big contract? And I know it's a tough conversation to have because I think Brock Purdy is a good player. I don't think he's a generational talent, but I do think that he is a solid quarterback. And I do think that, him and the 49ers maybe could work something out. But, I mean, if you got to give him a $60 million contract, I mean, then you got to say, thank you for, these past few years. Because I would not give him that contract. Now it's like, well, then what do you do? Because, this roster is getting older. And, many people, well, I don't know if many, but there are people out there that think the window is closed for them. Because of now the roster getting another year older, guys got hurt. I think if this team could bounce back next year and stay healthy, I think they're going to be right back in the same position that they were last year. It's just one of those years. You got to go in to the draft and, draft depth, of course. Get some better players, revamp the defense. I think there's, maybe some more players that you could add on that side of the ball. Offensively, I mean, you're just going to have to rely on guys being healthy. Deebo Samuel had a challenging year. Brandon Ayuk getting hurt. McCaffrey getting hurt. Ricky Pearsall with what happened with him. There's a lot that happened. And if they could stay healthy next year, I think they'll be one of the best. But, it's just one of those years. Now, there are some people having those conversations about Kyle Shanahan, and I think there are some people within the fan base and maybe just fans in general that think that he should lose his job. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but I think people have kind of had enough with, not taking that next step and winning that championship. Now, the 49ers have been very successful with Kyle Shanahan, but they have not won that Super Bowl. And part of the reason for that is you just ran up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But listen, they had a 10-point lead in both of those games. They could have very easily won those games, and they didn't. And people point to Kyle Shanahan as the reason why they haven't been able to get it done. And this year they're not going to get it done because I don't think they're making the playoffs right now. Unless they go on a run. But I thought they were going to go on a run with McCaffrey, and they're going to have to do it without him. And on top of that, you might have to do it without Nick Bosa. Because I don't know if he's going to be playing this week. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about the 49ers and their injury concerns. What do you think happens next year? Jordan Mason, like I said, looking at the article, he's going to become a free agent. So, we'll see if the Niners bring him back. I don't know if they will, but we'll see. And let's just hope that McCaffrey can come back stronger than ever next year. So, we're going to take our first break of the show now. When we come back, we'll talk about the MVP race, where it currently stands at the moment. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.